Hi guys. I wanted to do a little fire starting video. Um, I'm out here on my property, but it's pretty wooded. As you can see, pretty typical of what you would normally see out in the forest around here. Uh, we're in a ravine. There's a little meadow buried under the snow right now. It's drizzling today. Um, anyway, I wanted to do a little fire starting video to show you how I would do it. If I lost most of my gear, if I didn't have my backpack, let's say I was hunting um, or bow hunting or whatever, and for some reason got separated from my stuff, and all I have is what I would normally carry on me on my person. So let me get started, and I'll probably have to try to figure out how to splice this thing, but because it's gonna get long if I don't. But I'll start off by showing you what I carry on my person. So I'm gonna do a sound over on the rest of this video because my camera microphone started going out. Here is the knife I'd carry on my body. I try to carry this anytime I go into the woods. It's a knife I made in a sheath that was custom made for it, but you could find similar things online. This one is made by Positive Craft Leather. He's a really good guy, does custom stuff, and will make it to fit your knife of preference. The knife I carry is a 7-inch full tang strong blade. It's 440C, and it's just, I mean, it really doesn't matter as long as you have a strong fixed blade knife. In my opinion, that's really what is ideal. But you can do this with any knife. That there is a ferro rod, 1/2 inch. I got it off of eBay for $3, I think. That's a little broadhead. I use it as a razor blade or anything I need a very small sharp point for. I guess you could use it as a backup knife as well if you needed to. Not ideal for that, but. And then in that pocket I carry the Altoids tin, the standard survival Altoids tin. I have not a lot in it actually. I carry a bunch of, not a bunch, probably 3 or 4 Vaseline balls, petroleum jelly, saturated cotton balls. I melt the petroleum jelly and then dip the cotton balls inside, so they're fully saturated. Makes them waterproof completely. Other people rub the jelly onto the cotton. That's not the ideal way, in my opinion. The cotton could still absorb water. That way, it's saturated 100%. Carry a photon flashlight. Those things are awesome. Last forever and great for little lanterns and a tent or tarp, whatever. A little bit of cordage, a mini 550 cord, and there is your regular lighter. And that's pretty much it. Oh, a little athletic tape in there too. But that's mostly what I carry. The Let's see here. I'm trying to remember what I was talking about. I think what we were getting with here is that tin pretty much has what you need: light source, lighter, a fire source, some cordage. Things that are a little harder to come by in the forest, especially the cordage. But anyway, the purpose of this video was to show what would happen if you needed to start a fire in a drizzly, wet condition where pretty much all your materials are wet, or at least very damp, and that's the point of it. That lighter there, obviously it works, but I'm going to pretend like it doesn't. It's happened to me before where the lighter little tabby gets knocked or something, and the gas escapes, without me noticing. And then you take your lighter out, try to use it, and it's empty. So that's a very possible thing could happen. I'm also going to assume that my Vaseline balls or whatever are either, I don't know, maybe they weren't made right, they got soaked with water, maybe I used them up because I'd been out already for a few days, and whatever. But I'm just going to assume all I have with me is my knife and my ferro rod, and it would be a good idea to get a decent ferro rod. Also, obviously, a decent knife is important, but don't just deal with these little dinky ones that you can buy at the store. That's a 1/2 inch rod, which is good, gives a good spark, and it really doesn't weigh that much. There's really no reason to go smaller than that, in my opinion. 1/2 inch by, I think that's about 3 inches or so. That'll last for a very, very long time, and it'll give a very good spark. And like I said, I think I bought a 5 or 6 inch long piece for like $4 from China on eBay. So it's really inexpensive, cut in half, and you got two. So the idea is that's where I am, and I will be scavenging materials to make a fire. Let's see here. So this is a pine forest, and the thing about evergreens is the sap and resin that just comes out of them pretty much everywhere. Every time they get an injury, they start, spewing that stuff, and that's the trick. That's kind of actually one of the things the video is mostly about. Is instead of just trying to start a fire with what you have, look around, because there's a lot of natural resources that will help you start a fire even when everything's wet. In this particular case, I'm looking around for basically an injured tree. When you see downed trees like that, when those trees come down, they hit branches, and on the trees next to them. When one of those branches gets broken off, what you end up with is a little bit of sap coming out. Sometimes a lot of sap, depending on how big the branch or what time of year. There's a branch there that's got some sap oozing out of it, and pretty much anywhere you see an injury to the tree. Here there's a really big, really messed up piece of this tree where it got damaged pretty good, and you can see the sap just pouring out of it, running down. That stuff burns really well. So that is going to be our basically petroleum jelly substitute. We're going to take that and a little bit of that. As soon as we find something that we can use as a wick for it, that'll give us a fire. And I'll be using that. I don't know what it's called, but it's all over the branches on the trees around my place anyway. And you just pull it off. It's very fine. I don't know, moss or whatever it is. This particular piece is damp because it's been raining. Actually, it is drizzling as I'm filming that, and it's been raining on and off and snowing the last couple days. So it's damp, but the fibers are fine enough, I think, that it will catch a spark. And as long as there's something, some kind of liquid that gets absorbed into it to burn, again, like the word that I can wick out, I think it'll burn fine, even though it is damp. So I believe right now I'm going to start looking around to gather things to start building a decent fire. Okay, so here it looks like I've already gathered what I'm going to be gathering. I didn't take very long. When a person, if you're seriously in need of a fire, take time to gather your materials. You don't want to rush it. I was kind of in a hurry when I filmed this, so I might have taken 3 minutes. I mean, a quick little walk got me, a few little pieces of that resin, some of that moss that was growing on the trees. That bundle is probably the size of a golf ball, maybe. There's a twig with some resin on it. There's just some little twigs and branches that I found about pencil size, a little bigger, a little smaller, but right around there. And since all that is actually moist and pretty damp, I actually took a piece of a downed tree off and batoned it, split it with my knife. That gave me pretty much there's the piece right there. That pretty much gave me the only dry wood around. So you find a downed dead tree that's up off the ground, take a couple chunks off of it and baton them, and you end up something. That grass, just a couple handfuls. It was again pretty wet, But the idea is that that resin will allow the fire to go long enough to dry out the grass. That'll burn, and then that'll last long enough to dry out the twigs, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go up to branches or anything today because I didn't really have time. I wanted to get the video over with and get home for dinner. So I'm just going to get up to those split pieces. Once you get past that point, as long as you have your stuff handy and you pick dry or as dry as you can, fire wood or branches or whatever. Once you get to that point, it's pretty simple to keep a fire going. And I believe I'm going to set it up and start the process of actually lighting a fire now. I guess I'm talking for a little bit more, but basically just going back and talking about this tinder that I used. Not a whole lot to it. Oh, that's right. I was gonna start trying to do it one-handed. It got kind of a pain though. But yeah, you just mash that resin right into the green moss, and you can use dried grass for that instead if it's dry enough, and you can roll it and bring out the fibers in the grass, so they'll catch a spark. Then that would work fine. But all the grass around me was soaking wet, so this had thinner fibers, and I figured it would work better. There, I'm just mentioning it is drizzling, even though you can't tell. Obviously, if you're going to do something like this in the rain or wind or anything, seek a sheltered place. I'm just under a tree, just to kind of keep the drizzle off of me, make it a little bit easier. You don't want to do it out in a field if you can avoid it. All right, so there is the little ball of moss or whatever that is, mixed with a little bit of resin. I just worked the weeds or the grass just a little bit, just enough to try to bring out some of the fibers. It didn't work very well because it was too wet. But if they were dry, it would be simple. Either way, I worked them a little bit, and I'm going to start trying to get a spark. Here you can see how great those half-inch ferro rods spark. They spark really well. But even with that, I was having trouble. I'm going to try it for a little bit longer, and I'm going to fail. I got some of the sparks on there, but the location just wasn't quite good enough. And that's one of the things. It's a lot easier to light up something away from your bird's nest or away from where you're trying to light your fire, and then just put it in once it's lit, if you can do that. So here I'm going to kind of give up there. Got an ember, but that wasn't enough. And move it out of the way to give myself a little more room when I'm trying to spark it. It'll just give my spark placement a little better. I could be a little more accurate without trying to worry about knocking over that bird's nest. The other thing, in this particular case, that was pretty wet. Like I said, that green moss. So you can, flip your knife over. I know this isn't ideal, but you can flip your knife over. You can shave off a few pieces of ferro rod, and then give that a spark, and bam. That really localizes the heat and gets it going. That's pretty fast if you do it that way. I try not to because that wears out your ferro rod a little faster, but yeah, if you have to, you have to. And that ferro rod being half-inch will last a very long time even using it that way. So here we got fire going. It is I'm working really fast, too fast, because those twigs are pretty wet, and I'm hoping to get them onto the bird's nest, which is the name for that, pretty much that bundle of dry grass, even though it's not dry. But I'm trying to get the twigs on there to see if I can start drying them out as fast as possible. Again, the idea is the resin should keep the stuff going long enough to provide enough heat to actually dry it out. Here it's just another view of it. It's going. The grass is you can see it's all steaming and smoking, all that moisture's coming out of it. But it is going, and slowly but surely it will dry out those twigs, and they in turn will dry out the larger pieces of wood. Often when you see the fire kind of dying out like that, just pick up that bundle a little bit, get it a little off the ground, let some fresh air in, and it'll perk right back up. One thing fire needs more than anything is to breathe, so just don't smother it. So here it's going, again it's just drying out all the tinder around it, and right about there you can see that the flames are really starting to pick up, and at that point I can pretty much assume that this fire is healthy and it'll take off. At this point is when I'd put in larger, drier pieces of wood if I could find them, or whatever. But try to keep, if you're doing it in a wet environment, get as much of that stuff as close to the fire as you can without smothering it, so it starts drying out even before it starts catching on fire. Pine needles, pine cones, anything with a good amount of sap or resin in it works great. You can find fat wood even inside of old rotten stumps. The outer wood rots away, but the inside wood that's completely saturated in resin, which is what they call the fat wood, or there's other names for it, but basically the wood fibers that are impregnated with the sap or resin, that stuff does not rot away, at least not very fast. So in an old rotten stump, you can usually find fat wood in the middle of it. Here the fire's going fine. You can see it's kind of getting late, but at this point in time, it would be a simple thing to just add wood as necessary and get it going from there. But I think the moral of the story, or this video anyway, is one, look around and use what is around you, not just what you brought in your backpack or what happens to be in your pockets. These forests have tons of resources for fire, especially with all the resin in the trees. And even in a wet area, you can pretty much guarantee that there's something around you that you can use. Some amount of resin, look for down trees, look for stumps where there might be some fat wood, or the lower branches of large trees sometimes contain a small core of fat wood in it. You can usually break those off of the trunk, and you'll see a little bit of fat wood in there, which you can shave off, and then that'll catch a spark too, actually, by itself. And I believe that's pretty much the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it, and remember, really the two things you need to start a fire in a forest here, I mean reasonably easily start a fire. I'm not talking about friction fires or anything, but just an easy fire that the average person can do easily is a ferro rod and a knife, and practice.